Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So it's time to go through my October reading wrap up. I read 10 books in October and most of them were pretty good. There was one book that was like a standout new favourite, and then one book that was unfortunately a standout disappointment, and then a few books that were somewhere in the middle. So as usual, I'm gonna leave timestamps in the description just in case you would like to skip around. I'm going to start by going through my star ratings for all of the books that I read, and then I've picked out 5 or 6 that I'm going to talk through in a little more detail. So let's get into the star ratings. The first book that I read in October was Best Served Cold by Abercrombie, which I gave 3.5 stars. I then picked up A Study in Drowning by Reid, which I gave 4 stars. None of This Is True by Jewell, I also gave 4 stars. Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow, I also gave 4 stars. Then Inkblood Sister Scribe by Torsz, I gave 4.5 stars. This was so close to being a 5. Really good actually, by Heisey, I think is the author's name. I gave 3.5 stars. Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco, I gave 2 stars. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna, I gave 5 stars. Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin, I gave 4 stars. And then Payback's a Witch by Lana, Harper, I gave 3 stars. Almost forgot actually, I did also make a start on Out There Screaming, which is a short story collection edited by Jordan Peele. My plan was to read one of these short stories a day in the run-up to Halloween, but I didn't quite finish it in time. I think I've got about half of the short stories left, but I'm enjoying this so far and I'm going to continue reading this throughout November as well. Moving on to some more in-depth reviews then, and I'm going to start with None of This Is True by Jewell, which is a book that I read in October. I listened to the audiobook, and I don't think I've talked about this yet on my channel because I didn't read it for a vlog or anything, but I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I've read a few Jewell books now. I think this is like the 4th or 5th book that I've read by her, and while she isn't my favourite thriller author, I do feel like I know what I'm getting with her books. I think she has solid writing and she knows how to deliver a book that's entertaining and that's going to grip me and keep me interested even if I don't end up loving the book overall. So None of This Is True follows a main character called Josie who is out celebrating her 45th birthday when she runs into Alex, and Alex is also out celebrating her 45th birthday. So they get chatting in the bathroom of this restaurant about how they're birthday twins, and Josie starts to develop an unhealthy obsession with Alex and she starts investigating her. I don't know whether I'm explaining this right, but Alex is the host of a really popular podcast and Josie becomes obsessed with the idea of them being friends, and she thinks that she is the perfect subject for a new podcast series, and she offers to tell Alex about her story, and yeah, it kind of goes from there. I don't want to say too much because this is more character driven rather than plot driven, but this was a roller coaster. I think if I'd read this physically, I possibly wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. The audiobook is a full production. It has sound effects and a full cast, and I kept looking for excuses to carry on listening because I was really struggling to put it down. The only reason I gave this 4 stars and not 5 stars is because of the ending, and the ending is quite divisive in general. I've seen some people love the ending and some people hate it. I felt certain aspects of the ending were really clever, and there were certain things that I didn't see coming. However, there was one element which I think could have been handled a little better. It felt like it was trying to redeem a character who I felt was irredeemable, and I think now that it's been a few weeks since I finished this book, I've kind of interpreted it as the characters were trying to redeem this person rather than anything else. That's how I've chosen to interpret it. I really hope that is the case, because otherwise there was some stuff towards the end that made me feel really uncomfortable, and I don't know if that was the intention, but yeah, 4 stars, and would recommend if you like domestic thrillers, but I would recommend checking content warnings. It was a lot darker and more intense than I was expecting, but I do think this is one of my favourite books, if not my favourite book, by Lisa Jewell. Next up we have Best Served Cold by Jo Abercrombie, which is technically the 4th book in the First Law universe. It comes after the First Law trilogy, which I finished earlier this year. However, it does stand as a standalone, so you don't have to have read the trilogy to read this, although I would recommend doing that, because otherwise you will get a few medium spoilers, nothing major, but the characters do reference events that happened in the First Law trilogy. So this is a revenge story. We're following this main character called Monza, who was a general in this army led by Duke Orzo, I think is his name. The Duke of Orzo, sorry, I got that wrong. However, she was betrayed and left for dead, and now she is looking for revenge on those who did betray her, and we follow her as she recruits people to help her achieve this goal. The book is split into sections where each section focuses on a different person that they're trying to murder, and I liked how this had, it's not a found family because they don't really like each other, but it follows a group of characters who have a really interesting dynamic. This also has some really interesting twists and turns that I didn't see come in, and generally I liked the plot. However, I struggle sometimes with Jo Abercrombie's character writing, and just to clarify, I think he writes really complex main characters. His main characters feel really distinctive and they have memorable personalities and characteristics that I really like. However, he writes so many insignificant side characters that I find it really distracting. There would be moments where a main character would be interacting with a group of side characters and I would be struggling to work out who all these people were and why I should care about them. Also, I would really love to understand what Jo Abercrombie has against maps, because the characters in this move around quite a lot and I was really struggling to keep track of everything. Like, I'm quite a visual learner, so I rely on maps to help me remember where characters have been and where they're going and where they're from, and yeah, it was a struggle. I did listen to the audiobook for this while reading along physically, and I would recommend the audiobooks. Stephen Pacey's narration is fantastic because he does all of these different voices for the different characters, and yeah, it was a really immersive experience. So yeah, I gave this 3.5 to 4 stars, and I do plan on picking up the next standalone, hopefully in November. Moving on to my favourite book of October, and that was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. This was so cute and adorable, and it's one of the easiest 5 stars that I've given out so far this year, so don't be surprised if it ends up as one of my favourite books of of 2023. I loved this and I am very excited to read more books by this author. I think she has another book coming out next year. I can definitely see the comparisons to House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune and Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. I think if you liked either of those books, then there's a good chance that you would also like this cozy fantasy. I thought the found family was done really well and it was just so cute. I'm going to use the word cute a lot throughout this review, but that was my overwhelming feeling towards this book. So in this book we are following a witch called Mika, and she is recruited to help tutor these 3 children who are also witches. All of this has to be kept a secret though, because witches are meant to live in isolation. All witches are orphans, so not long after they're born, their parents pass away, and they usually grow up in isolation. And there were a lot of discussions around loneliness throughout this book, which I really appreciated. There's also a really sweet romance, which I really appreciated, and it was just adorable. I am gonna stop repeating myself, I promise. But if you do like cozy fantasy, then I would really recommend picking this up. It made me cry because I was just so overwhelmed while I was reading it. I actually read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches in a reading vlog, which I will try and remember to link in the cards and in the description. But another book that I read for that vlog was my most disappointing book of October, and that was Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. So this is the first book that I've read by Kerri Maniscalco, and I don't like her writing, is what I've learned, and that was the main issue that I had with this book. I liked the idea of the plot. This is a YA fantasy romance which leans heavier on the fantasy rather than the romance, at least in the first book. We're following a witch called Amelia who summons a prince from hell to help her investigate why witches in Sicily are being murdered, including someone close to her. The Italian-inspired setting was really cool, and I liked how there were a lot of descriptions of food. It made me really hungry while I was reading. However, I hated the main character, Amelia. It's told in first-person POV, and being inside her head was so frustrating because none of her behaviour really made sense to me. Like, the mystery element wasn't that satisfying. It didn't feel like she was strategizing her next move. She was just going from one place to the next, and things were happening to her, so the reveals didn't really feel like they'd been earned. When I finished the book, I had to actually Google what the ending meant because I thought I understood it, but it turns out I was wrong, and there was just so much that I found really confusing and difficult to follow. The only thing I liked was the romance. I did quite like Wrath as a character, but I don't feel invested enough in the romance to continue. So yeah, I'm really sad that I didn't love this because I have heard good reviews, I think. I remember when it came out, it was getting a lot of hype. I think that was in 2020. So I was expecting to really love this, but yeah, I didn't like the writing, so unfortunately I gave it 2 stars. If you have been excited for this book though, I would still recommend picking it up because it was really fast paced, and I know lots of people do really like this series. The next book on my list to talk about is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid, which is a YA fantasy with dark academia elements. I say it's YA, but this to me felt like upper YA. So So I think even if you don't usually read YA fantasy, but the plot for this intrigues you, then I would still recommend giving it a go. This is the second book that I've read by Reid, and I really like their writing. This was perfect for autumn. It gave me those dark and stormy vibes that I was really craving, and yeah, the atmosphere was probably my favourite thing about the book. The plot was also really interesting though. I do like a book about books. So this is following a main character called Effie, who is a university student studying architecture, and she's given this opportunity to enter a competition to redesign the home of her favourite author who recently passed away. Effie actually wanted to study literature, however in this world, or at least at this university, they don't believe that women should be allowed to study literature, so she chose architecture. Why can't I remember that word? She chose to study architecture, and she is chosen through this competition to go to this author's home, which you can see on the front cover. It overlooks this cliff face. She goes to this house and ends up investigating this author's life. There's another student, Preston is his name. He is also there for reasons that are very soon revealed. So yeah, don't know whether I did the best job of selling this book to you, but I really liked the characters in this, or I should say I really liked Effie as a character. I thought she went through a lot of development over the course of this book. She has been through some trauma in her past, and she has anxiety related to that, and she just felt like a very well-developed character. I did wish that we had a little more development of Preston, the love interest, because he felt like he existed just to be the love interest. Like I mentioned, this is marketed as YA, however it is a little uncomfortable at times. There are men who are behaving inappropriately towards young women, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit unsettling. However, I did think that Reid did a good job of handling those themes in a way that felt like a lot of care and thought had gone into it. So just something that I wanted to mention, but I gave this one 4 stars. Would really recommend it for autumn. I thought that it was really well written. The final book that I wanted to mention in this wrap up is Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torsz, which has a very shiny cover, so hopefully if I hold it like that it's not gonna mess too much with the lighting. But this is a book about books. It's adult fantasy, I think. I'm sure it's being marketed as adult. If you are used to reading YA, then I don't think there's any reason why you shouldn't pick this up. I think it's a good bridge book if you are looking to get into adult fantasy. In this, we're following 2 sisters, Esther and Joanna, and their father was a collector of magical books. It is set in our world, but there's these magical elements. So essentially the setup for this is that this guy was killed, and it seems like one of the books in his collection was responsible. So after his death, Joanna is left in charge of this magical library, and she dedicates her life to protecting it. Esther, on the other hand, left the family when she was, I want to say, 18, and ever since then she's never stayed in one place. She's moved from city to city, from country to country, and has now sort of settled in Antarctica on this research base. It took a little while for the plot to get going, and I don't really want to mention any details on the plot because that was, for me, part of the fun of this book. I thought this was a really clever mystery, and I loved learning about the magic and the books, and there were so many twists and turns that I didn't see coming. Some stuff I was able to work out, but in like a really satisfying way. I really wish I'd filmed my reaction to the ending of this book, because I was gripped. Every time I put this book down, I wanted to pick it back up, and I think that's the sign of a great book. It almost got 5 stars, however the main issue I had is that I wished there was more character development. I liked one of the relationships in this. There's an established sapphic romance that began before the start of this book, which I think could have had a little more development, and then there was also another romance which I felt was kind of shoehorned in and pointless. Each character seemed to have 1 or 2 personality traits to distinguish them, but then that was kind of it. So that was my main criticism, but otherwise this is a debut, so I will definitely be looking out for more books by this author. That does bring me to the end of this video though, so thanks for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this wrap up and what you thought of them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.